Right, Alex, can you hear me now? Okay, so I think we'll get started around about now. So, for anybody that doesn't get to catch this live, if you want to share it on LinkedIn, for anybody that doesn't see it, is what I mean. Feel free to share this link. This is going to be recorded and staying on YouTube, and there's also going to be a free resource that you can download that should hopefully help you guys in your own businesses, or indeed if you work for somebody else and you want to help them with their compliance, it will definitely help you to fill out the document, which will be shared at the end. So what this really is all about is how GDPR is going to work for recruiters. There is a lot of misinformation out there, and there is a lot of different steps that we're all taking, and there's a lot of disagreement about what we should or shouldn't be doing. So what I'm hoping to do today is give you a bit of an overview of my opinion towards this and what I think you can be doing. That's some very simple basic steps that's going to go a long way to becoming compliant. GDPR is not as complex as it's maybe made out. It can be very simple, but only if looked at in the right way. There's a lot of people claiming to be experts out there when in truth nobody can be an expert because it's not yet gone live. And indeed, it's still changing and being decided exactly how it's going to be implemented. So, to start off, I want to really point out that I am not an expert, just this bloke who's got an idea, and I'm currently doing this for my business. So, we are a company called Data Careers. We employ 11 people, and so our compliance maybe isn't too large in that respect, but our database has 70,000 strong, and we recruit for a global software business as well, and we have to be fully compliant with all their needs and vice versa. So we actually have quite a large operation undergo at the moment to make sure we are fully compliant. So this is just my interpretation of the documentation that's out there, of the legislation that's out there. But I would recommend that you do all your own research and all your own due diligence as well. Speak to professionals who maybe have experience in the Data Protection Act. That's going to be a key one because this is effectively replacing that or being an addition to. But like I said, a GDPR professional probably doesn't quite exist yet. It's going to be opinions, but maybe not solid facts. So what we're trying to achieve when we talk about GDPR compliance, really what we're doing is minimizing our exposure. So what I mean by this is others will be test cases in court. When this gets implemented, the ICO, which is the Information Commissioner's Office, this is the body which is basically responsible in the UK for making sure that we're all compliant. They have the ability to fine us. You'll have seen the eye-watering fines out there, which is I'm going to go off memory now. I think it's 20 million euros or 4% of turnover, whichever is higher. So if you're 500,000 to a 1 million turnover business, you could be fined 20 million as a maximum. Whilst that's unlikely, they have the ability there to shut down small businesses if the breach is considered to be substantial. So I would let others be those test cases. What you have to remember is just one complaint. All it takes is one complaint, and that's it. You might be under the scrutiny of the ICO and you could become that test case. And I'm sure we've all had it. You get an angry candidate saying, where did you get my information from? And that could easily turn into a complaint within a matter of a day, and then you could have them on your back. So we want to just be squeaky clean, let others go through the test cases in court. What we'll find is maybe parts of it are not commercially viable, maybe some bits are, and the ICO may relax their judging on certain areas of GDPR and they may get tighter on others, and it will give us an area to focus on. But until that point, let's just be squeaky clean, let the others be the test cases. So how are we going to do that? The first thing, and a surprising amount of businesses aren't aware of the current requirement that you have to be registered as someone that controls personal data with the ICO. Basically, if you're a recruitment agency, this is a prerequisite. There's somebody who ran an agency that helps military veterans get into work, was recently actually fined £5,000 for not being registered. So that's something you should currently be. And if you are not, I would strongly suggest you get registered as soon as possible. Unfortunately, in this instance, claiming ignorance is not a defense. Not knowing about this is not a defense. If they find out and you're not registered, which does happen, then you would be subjected to this fine. It could be more than 5,000, especially as they've been accused of not having teeth and they are looking to flex their muscles a bit in the ICO. So there's been a bit of misinformation floating around about something called a DPO. So this is the other thing that is going to be something that you're going to have to do. There was originally, this is probably back in 2016, there was an idea that a DPO would be not needed if you were an SME, a small business that had, I think it was under 250 employees. It's not strictly true. There was actually a senior official from the ICO released a statement saying that for anybody that controls personal identifiable information, they will have to appoint a DPO. So there's a bit of conflicting information out there, but appointing a DPO you can do internally. So it's almost definitely compulsory, but you can do it internally. Therefore, it's free. You don't have to necessarily pay somebody. The key thing is, in a perfect world, this person would have no conflict of interests. So somebody that is going to be processing that data themselves, and maybe one of your consultants, for example, is likely to have a conflict of interest. So in an ideal world, it wouldn't be that individual, and you can outsource to an external provider if wanted, if needed. But my recommendation would be find somebody internally that can read up on the legislation and be the go-to person for any queries. So to really move on to some of the key points about GDPR, and this is going to lead straight into the 5 things that you can look at to be compliant as soon as possible. There's actually 6 different types of key consent, if memory serves, but the 3 that we're going to be mainly concerned about in recruitment are these 3. So just to quickly go through what these mean, explicit consent has to be absolute, undeniable, affirmative action. So this isn't, if someone sends you their CV, that doesn't mean you necessarily have that person's permission to do whatever you want with that CV and send them job alerts and marketing information. So what you need to get from them is something that would say, yes, I am happy for you to represent me and send my CV to anybody you like, if that makes sense. So that's, you need that kind of affirmative action. Now, when someone sends a CV to you for a specific job, that's that is effectively permission for you to consider them for that job, but that job only. So that's explicit consent, but that has to be affirmative action, something that they've done, not a lack of something they've done, but something they have done to confirm they're happy for you to represent them. Legitimate interest is a bit of a grey area. We had a conversation recently on the Recruiters Arms forum where we were talking about how that can be used for marketing purposes, and correct, it can, but it's a very, very complex area, legitimate interest. It's basically, if you sign up to a mailing list with Curry's PC World, then they could justifiably think, well, I can send you the blogs from PC World about computers. I can send you all this information about computers because you've signed up to our newsletter or you've signed up to our product information. That's one thing. But just if you apply for a job in January for a C# developer, us then sending you job alerts maybe for a VB developer 100 miles away, that's not necessarily of interest to you. And it's a grey area that may not be defined as legitimate interest. So to really simplify this, because I promised this would be simple, when someone sends you a CV, you have got consent. You have got consent. Oh, sorry, you have got consent from that person. I've lost my slide. So when someone sends you a CV, you've now got explicit consent to represent them for that job. You need to tell them where their CV is going to be sent. So tell them the client name and you're good. You don't necessarily have interest in this stage to send them job alerts. So sending them something like an email where they can reply and say, yes, please do that. Then you've got permission to send them job alerts. That's as simple as that. And you don't need to overcomplicate it anymore. Legal reasons. You can have legal reasons for processing data now. This is going to be things like payroll information or HR information, and more importantly, definitely from a recruitment standpoint, proving someone's identity. So if you're hiring people and you need to prove they have the right to work in the UK, you may be gathering things like passports, driving licenses, you may be gathering national insurance numbers, dates of birth. Now, this is all very sensitive data, but it's data that you need to gather for legal reasons. Now, you can't really justify holding this for just people that have applied to you, but people that you have sent for interviews or that have accepted jobs through you, this is going to be a legal basis for processing that data. But what I would say is make sure it's on a very secure area that not everybody has access to, but we're going to come on to that in a bit. So consent does need to be gained by any of the above 3 methods for any individual type of processing. So like I said, applying for a job, sending a CV for a job is one type of processing. Sending them information about other jobs is another type of processing. So that's all that means. So the 5 steps, these are really the 5 key areas that I wanted to go through. So these are the things that you can do now. That's going to be very positive action where even if the ICO comes after you, if you've done these 5 things, then you're going to be in a pretty good light. So cleansing your current data. So try and find all the data you've got. And this is going to be, what I mean by this is the data that you actively work with. So if you've got a CRM, the job alerts you're sending out, or if you've got people you regularly contact, if you've got basically a hot list, talent pools, anything like that, cleanse all of it. If There's stuff you don't need, delete it, get rid of it. If you're never going to want it, this might be stuff that's 10 years ago and you've not touched since, just get rid of it, not needed. If it's data you want to keep, then make sure all these people are contacted. The easiest method for us is that we are sending out email messages that has a massive green opt-in button, clearly demonstrates to them what they're signing up to. When they click that button, they go to a section of our website that says, you have given us permission to process your data. This is what we're going to do with it. Here are James Vickery's contact details if you want to change your preferences at any time or have your information deleted from our database, contact James. So we've done that. So that's how we're cleansing our current data. Anybody that gives us no response to that will just be deleted. There's no need for us to keep that information. So what this should mean from an agency point of view is you will have a much more engaged and relevant database of people that want to speak to you. So in many respects, this could be a good thing. The second thing you need to do is look at your Outlook folders. Now, this is a pretty bad place to be storing candidate information. I'm sorry to say, if this is how you do it, I'm sorry. I would stop. Outlook folders are going to cause you an absolute nightmare. You've got auto archiving problems. When you maybe change from one laptop to another, you've then got personal data left on the old laptop and also on your new laptop. And it's also in the backup mail server online, which you maybe don't have access to yourself, and maybe your business doesn't even have access to. And if it's just in your Outlook folders and you've sent a message to someone, and that it just gets messy. It gets very messy. Try to not keep information in your Outlook folders. And if you must do it, my recommendation is delete everything you've currently got, because cleansing that data is going to be a nightmare unless you want to go through it individually. And the other thing I would say is keep one folder there for active CVs that you know you've got permission for, and then have subfolders maybe in that category for skill sets. But that would be something you would have to regularly go through and delete when you haven't got them. Or you can set up a rule to auto delete every 3 months, something that is 3 months old, for example. The third action is to check your desktop and file explorer. And this is for every employee in your business. If they're storing CVs on their desktop, or if they're storing CVs in their file explorer, by which I mean my documents and things like that, it's okay to keep these things there, but you need to document the fact that it's there. And this also needs to be outlined in your GDPR policy. So when somebody submits their CV to your database, they're fully aware how their information will be held, and it's going to be held in a file explorer or on your desktop, which is not, unfortunately, the most secure way to hold data. So they need to be fully aware of that before you do it. If someone was to gain the data from the desktop and you hadn't declared that, it would cause you problems. And track down any hard copies. If you've got hard copies, just shred them. Don't be keeping those. If that gets found, then it's going to cause you problems. You've got to think about this. Like if you had your information, like your tax records, for example, and that's got loads of personal information, how would you feel if someone had printed that off and took it home? And if you then give an access request to say, I want my information deleted, you've got no way of knowing where those hard copies have gone. Hard copies are going to cause you too many problems. And the final one is to look at your current CRM and shared drives, or if you don't have these, consider going with one. So your current CRM, speak to your CRM provider if you have one, and ask them what they're doing about GDPR compliance. They should be putting in systems now where you will have tick boxes to confirm that they've given you permission. You will know what type of permission you've got from them, and it should have an automatic system for you where when that permission expires, whether that be 3, 6, 9, 12 months, it's an ambiguous number, unfortunately. Whether it's 3, 6, 9, 12 months, it should be able to alert you that those are now expiring and you've had no engagement from them in those time periods. Therefore, you need to requalify it. We use Firefish, which is great because they have something called engagement indicators. So if someone's engaged with us by sending a CV, or they've engaged with us by emailing us to confirm something, they've got an engagement indicator, so we know they've done that, and that helps us track our GDPR compliance as well. So these 5 things here, I'm going to go into a little bit more detail, and there's going to be a download for you at the end that will give you a lot more information on what you do at each stage. But these are the 5 things that if you're on top of these 5 areas, then actually there's not a lot else you need to do to necessarily be compliant, because this is going to be all your information then stored in a searchable, easy to find way. And if someone asks their information to be deleted, you're going to be able to do that easily. If they ask to know where their information's gone, you can track that because it will be on a more secure area where you'll know where it's gone. For example, with a CRM, you know when a CV's been sent from a CRM. But the point I have here about shared drives is, if you've got a shared drive like OneDrive, just think who needs access to that shared drive. A lot of people have a policy where just the whole company accesses a shared drive, but one thing under GDPR is you shouldn't be just sharing that data with everyone in the business. If they don't need to see it, don't give them access. So my recommendation here is, if you have OneDrive, have a shared folder for company documents, but give everybody their own individual password protected file. a sort of a document area on that shared drive so that they can just access theirs and theirs alone as well. That's going to be the key thing to do there. So next step to look here is really something I think I've already kind of talked about, so I won't really say it again. But yeah, this is the fact that a CV submission does give you permission, but only for that specific job they've applied for. So it's not really legitimate interest to keep their CV for other things in my mind. Others may disagree, but I don't think it's worth doing that. I talked about minimizing your exposure and making sure that we are completely squeaky clean. I wouldn't bother venturing into grey area until we know more. So separate and explicit and ambiguous consent must be gained to keep their data. So this would be affirmative action by them, replying to an email saying, yes, I'm happy for you to do that. That kind of thing would be what you need. So there is actually a link in the description of this video. If you click that, you will download basically a policy framework that I've put together. So this is what we do in Data Careers. This is how we are becoming compliant. It's quite exhaustive. It's got a lot of different areas to cover. It does cover all the things that we've spoken about in those 5 steps. And basically, it's a fill in the blanks type scenario. Everywhere highlighted in yellow is somewhere where you can just input your CRM provider or your company name or your logo, that kind of stuff. And it should give you an action plan and a framework to work to become fully compliant by May. Some of the dates there were in the past, but luckily I built in about sort of 4 months worth of leeway, so you could start this in January and you'd still be compliant by May. So just change the dates to be appropriate for you, and obviously edit the bits that aren't relevant, but it will give you something to work off. And once again, if the ICO investigates you, if you can see you've got a policy framework in place that's going to build towards being compliant, it's going to go a long way to either not getting a fine or reducing the level of it. So that was kind of, hopefully, I promised it to be a simple walkthrough. I feel like I waffled a lot and made it less simple than I probably promised. I hope that was of some benefit to some people. Like I said, it was just my main opinion on it, but I am the DPO for Data Careers. I do a lot of IT techie stuff. I work with data on a daily basis, and I'm classing myself as an amateur expert in GDPR because I've pretty much read that legislation back to front. So any questions at all, if you want to post them in the live comment section, I will try to respond to them. Or if you want to email me, my email address is on the screen here and my mobile number as well. Do feel free to call me. I'm just on the other end of the phone for any advice you need, whether that be about a process or if you want some advice on how to set up a specific platform like auto tracking responses of emails, for example. For the first few that get in touch with me, I've got some spare space on my server. I can set you up with a database that will track all your responses and let you know whose data you can keep. I can do that for the first few people that contact me if they want it. After that, I'll be running out of space. So first come, first served. But thank you, everybody. Really appreciate your time and for tuning in. And we will speak soon, I'm sure.